August 31st, 2024. Something big has happened near Xianbin Reef in the South China Sea. The Philippine Coast Guard ship No. 9701 has finally moved after playing dead for over 100 days. Why did it move now? I can't reveal that just yet, no spoilers. But let me give you an analogy. Imagine you have a turtle that hasn't moved for a year. How do you know if it's dead or alive? You have to kick it, and when you do, it moves. Then you can say, oh, it's still alive. Do you get what I mean? The specific details will have to wait. After all, this story needs to be told in chronological order. If you skip around, it might get confusing. This is really interesting, extremely interesting. Okay, that's the end of the introduction. Let's continue the story. Last time, we talked about how the Philippine leader, Little Marcos, in order to get 500 million from Big America, conspired with his chief of staff, Romeo, to hatch a sinister plan to ram the Panda Nation's Coast Guard ship. The goal was to either sink or capsize the ship, causing people to fall into the water. If that happened, Big America would be delighted, and the mission would be accomplished, earning Little Marcos his 500 million deposited into his American bank account. But Little Marcos and his team knew their own strength. The Panda Nation's Coast Guard ships were much larger. When they reviewed their own fleet, they realized that they didn't even have warships over 3,000 tons. So how could they possibly capsize a Panda Nation Coast Guard ship? If they wanted to ram one, they needed something to ram with. The only option was to pick on the smallest of the Panda Nation's Coast Guard ships. With Big America's help, they finally found a soft target in the form of the 21,551 ship, which only displaces 300 tons. In fact, in China's Coast Guard, the 21,551 is really just a patrol boat. It's too small, only 300 tons. So, the Philippines set their sights on this ship. They decided it was their best bet to sink it. To further their plan, they created a diversion at Huangyan Island with a 500-ton class Coast Guard ship, repeatedly showing up to attract the attention of the Chinese Coast Guard, causing the main forces to move towards Huangyan Island. This left only the 21,551 and the 3104 to guard the Renai Reef area. The 21,551 is a 300-ton patrol boat, while the 3104 is larger, about 2,000 tons. Previously a retired warship that was incorporated into the Coast Guard. By August 19th, these were the only Coast Guard forces left near Xianbin Reef, with the others gathered at Huangyan Island. To be honest, their strength was weak. I explained these details clearly in the last episode, so I won't repeat them. Let's focus on what happened around 1 a.m. on August 19th. The Philippines deployed to reinforce Parola-class patrol boats to charge toward Xianbin Reef. To be fair, the Philippines did make a significant investment sending out to Parola-class ships at once. These Parola-class patrol boats were given to the Philippines for free by Japan. Now, why would Japan give ships to the Philippines when they're not even related? Clearly, they didn't have good intentions. But these Parola-class patrol boats have far superior overall performance compared to the Philippine Coast Guard ships, with more advanced engines, radar, and electronic control systems. More importantly, the hulls of these Parola-class boats are reinforced, with the sides visibly reinforced with steel bars clearly designed for ramming. So, in the early hours of August 19th, the Philippines sent out to Parola-class boats, the Bajakayo with hull number 4410 and the Engano Point with hull number 4411. Their mission was to sink China's 21,551 Coast Guard ship. To maximize the impact, they even brought along journalists. The Bajakayo was in charge of the ramming, while the Engano Point was responsible for recording the event, capturing how China's 21,551 Coast Guard ship would be sunk by them. Isn't China supposed to be powerful? They thought. Well, today we're going to sink your ship and show the world that the Philippines isn't a pushover. We can have our share of the pie too. Additionally, the footage would help them claim the money from Big America. So, in the early hours of August 19th, they quietly set off toward Balawan Island. You can look at a map. It's about 100 kilometers from Balawan Island to Xianbin Reef, not too far. At the speed of a Parola-class patrol boat, it's only about a 3-hour journey. Around 3 a.m. on August 19th, under the light of a full moon, the dark sea was shimmering with silver. There were no waves that day. The waters near Xianbin Reef were as calm as a park lake, with not a ripple. The temperature was around 26 degrees Celsius. If you stood on Xianbin Reef, you would feel a gentle breeze, surrounded by darkness, with the water so calm it was eerie. There were no sounds of waves, and the surrounding shallow waters were teeming with sea cucumbers, lobsters, squid, and jellyfish. You could never eat them all. But you better not go in the water to catch them, because this is also a paradise for sharks. Even in waist-deep water, a shark could bite your leg and drag you into the deep sea. However, sharks aren't the most dangerous animals in this area. The deadliest are sea snakes. A sea snake's venom is 10 times more potent than that of a cobra. If bitten by a sea snake, the venom would cause your blood to coagulate within 5 minutes, leading to death. So, while this area is rich in resources, it's also fraught with deadly dangers. If a ship capsizes and people fall into the water, casualties are almost certain. The Philippines' Bajacay and Engano Point were speeding toward Xianbin Reef in the dark early morning of August 19th to achieve a surprise attack. They turned off their transponders and shipborne radar, relying on satellite data provided by Big America for intelligence and navigation. Nothing noteworthy happened on the way. By 3 a.m., the Bajacay and Engano Point had gradually approached the vicinity of Xianbin Reef. Satellite data showed that the Panda Nation's 21,551 patrol boat was less than 10 kilometers ahead of them, with the slightly larger 3,104 ship about 20 kilometers away. The Bajacay and Engano Point began to lower their engine power to minimize noise. The Parola-class patrol boats, designed by Japan, have low profiles and waterlines, making them harder to detect due to their small size. According to the Philippine plan, they were to quietly approach the 21,551, suddenly accelerate, and capsize it. If the 21,551 capsized, the Chinese Coast Guard would be thrown into chaos, scrambling to rescue people. Then the two boats would quickly approach the 9,701, which had been stationary for over 100 days, supply it, and swiftly leave the scene. You see, the fire had been lit, but their plan wasn't as smooth as they imagined. When the two Parola-class boats were still more than 20 kilometers away from the 21,551, they were already detected by us. What happened? Well, there's no way around it. China's radar technology is the best in the world. Even a small Parola-class vessel can't escape the monitoring of Chinese radar within a range of 20 to 30 kilometers. At that time, on the radar screen, we saw two patrol boats approaching. The silhouette looked familiar, as if we had seen it near the Diao Islands before. Isn't this Japan's Parola class? Could it be the Japanese coming? Wow, that would be great. Should we deal with them? Wait a minute, it seems these two ships are coming straight at us. What should we do? Should we directly engage them or wait to see what they do? While we were discussing, the two Filipino Parola-class patrol boats had already approached the 21,551. Our 21,551 was watching them closely, wondering what they were up to. Were they secretly delivering supplies to the 9701? Well, it makes sense. The 9,701 had been without supplies for over a month. Maybe the Filipinos were getting desperate, but why be so sneaky about it? It's like they're playing some secretive game. Besides, it's not like we were saying you couldn't deliver supplies. You can, but you need to report it to us. If you don't report it, how can I approve it? And if I don't approve it, how can you deliver the supplies? There are procedures to follow. They clearly lack discipline and need more training. While our 21,551 was pondering this, the Filipinos' BRP Bacacay had already come right up. At this point, the captain of the Bacacay was thrilled. Finally, they were within 1,000 meters of the 21551. Surely, they would make contact. Full speed ahead. Ram the 21,551, he ordered. The Bacacay's engine roared, and the ship quickly reached 32 knots, slicing through the water like a speedboat, with the bow lifted high. The captain personally took the helm, aiming the sturdest part of the bow straight at the hull of the 21,551. When two ships collide at sea, there are many scenarios: head-on collisions, side-to-side squeezing, but most collisions result in side swipes. This usually doesn't cause the ships to capsize. It might only cause damage to the sides and scuffs on the hull. But if one ship rams another head-on, it could tip the other ship over. Ships are half above water and half below. With enough force, a ship could capsize. And once a ship capsizes, it's hard to write it. Look at that Korean ship from years ago when it capsized. Over 100 people were trapped inside. So once a ship capsizes, it's not just an accident, it's a maritime disaster. And this time, the Filipinos were aiming for a disaster. If they couldn't drown a few people, they wouldn't get that $500 million. At the time, our 21,551 didn't expect the Filipinos to do this. They were still deciding whether to shout at them or spray them with water cannons. But shouting never worked before, so why not just spray them first to cool them down and make them think twice? While our 21,551 was still considering, the Bakake had already reached them. From 700 meters away, journalists on the BRP Cape Ngagua aimed their cameras at the 21,551, ready to capture the dramatic collision. And then, in front of everyone, the collision finally happened. A loud crash echoed, audible even to the journalists on the Cape Ngagua 700 meters away. But what happened next stunned everyone. The Bakake's bow slammed hard into the hull of the 21,551, but the 21,551 didn't capsize. Instead, it slid a few meters sideways. The Bakake, however, had its windows shattered, its starboard side dented in, and the reinforcing steel bars on its hull buckled. The engine stalled. The 25 sailors on board were thrown around like rag dolls, the captain's face slammed into the steering wheel, and 3 of his teeth were knocked out. The captain, in disbelief, stared at the 21,551 ahead. Did we just hit a lump of iron? He thought, impossible, this doesn't make sense. I rammed them head on, but my engine's dead, and it looks like they're fine. Wiping the blood off his face, the captain inspected the 21,551 more closely, seeing only a few patches of paint chipped off. Beneath the paint, in the moonlight, he noticed the shine of metal. That single quotes S. steel beams. The 21,551's hull is reinforced with steel beams. Are they crazy? Why would you reinforce a 300-ton patrol boat? The Bakake's captain was in disbelief, and the crew of the 21,551 was also shocked. Hey, it seems like we got hit just now. We slid a few meters sideways, so the impact was strong, but why did they hit us? We could have just talked about it. Why resort to this? My 21,551 was built to ram others, not to get rammed. This is the first time I've been hit. Better check if our ship's damaged. Not long after, the first mate returned and reported, Captain, we've been hit. Some paint came off, and the primer is exposed. Looks like we'll need to file an insurance claim. The captain was furious. Damn it, you hit me. Do you think insurance is free? Once I use insurance, my premiums will go up next year. No way, don't let them get away. They need to pay for this. It's not just about the paint, there'll be a color mismatch. If we repaint, we'll have to do the whole ship, the first mate agreed. Makes sense. Captain, you've seen a lot. So they mounted the water cannon and began spraying the Bakake's bridge. The Bakake's crew, who had just gotten back on their feet, were drenched. Honestly, the 21,551's water cannon is more like a high-pressure water gun, but it's pretty effective. The Bakake's crew saw the damage to their ship and started to panic. The hull was deformed, they might sink soon. And now they were being sprayed with water. If they don't leave now, the water cannon might hit their chimney, and they'd be done for. With that, the Bakake's captain restarted the engine and fled. Journalists on the Cape Ngagua 700 meters away were stunned. This 21,551 is like a bumper boat in a park, it just slides away after a collision. They've turned a bumper boat into a Coast Guard ship. What a stroke of genius. These journalists, being well educated, immediately understood that the 21,551 was no ordinary patrol boat. Despite its small 300-ton size, it was a special vessel, China's domestically produced LG-550 high-speed law enforcement ship. It's 55 meters long, 7.6 meters wide, with 4 engines and 4 pairs of propellers underwater, capable of reaching speeds of up to 32 knots. Though it's only 300 tons, its draft is less than 5 meters, and it has a very low profile above the waterline. Overall, it looks like a flat object floating on the water. Why was it designed this way? Because it's a bumper boat. No matter how hard you hit it, it won't capsize. Think of bumper boats in a park. They can't flip because they're flat. You can push them away, but you can't flip them. They can keep coming back to bump you again. What's more, the GL-550 is reinforced with 5 steel beams, 3 horizontal and 2 vertical. And these aren't just steel rods, they're heavy-duty steel beams, incredibly strong. Even a 1,000-ton warship can outram the 21,551. It's like a woodpecker, constantly bumping into you, but never sinking. That's what we call persistence, and Japan's Corolla class. It's like their car's thin shells with a lot of filling. They look big, but try bumping into something. I remember a few years ago there was news about a Japanese car on the highway that hit a chicken. The bumper had a hole in it, and when they pulled over to check, the chicken was still alive inside the hole. It sounds like I'm criticizing Japanese cars again. No wonder so many people have been criticizing me recently. But I'm not afraid, because everything I say is true. In summary, let me tell you about the Corolla-class patrol boat from that country. Don't believe all the hype. They claim to have reinforced it with dozens of steel bars, but remember, this is a resource-poor nation. Those steel bars are probably no thicker than a thumb. If it really came to a clash at sea with our steel beams, they would be useless. So, regarding the Cape and Gago *, the reporter witnessed everything clearly. The captain of the Cape and Gago * saw the BRP Bagake * retreating, so he thought, I should retreat too, and turned to flee. But unfortunately, he couldn't escape. Why? Because our ship, the 3104, was coming from afar. Our 3104 is a nearly 2,000-ton military ship, retrofitted after decommissioning. The heavy weapons like missiles and rocket launchers were removed, but a 76mm PG-26 rapid-fire naval gun was retained at the bow. Don't underestimate this gun. It alone makes our Coast Guard ship the most heavily armed Coast Guard vessel in the world. Why do I say that? Because this gun has a prestigious background. It's based on Russia's AK-176 single-barrel 76mm stealth naval gun, known for its power and rapid-fire rate of 120 rounds per minute, 2 shots per second. Just think about it, this isn't just a rifle, it's a 76.2mm naval gun. When this gun fires, it's equivalent to an artillery battalion on land. Not only can it target ships, but it can also strike land and air targets, depending on the ammunition used. The gun's range is impressive too, able to accurately hit targets 15 kilometers away, or even up to 20 kilometers if precision isn't a priority. However, the Russian AK-176 has a drawback: it can only be fired manually. Imagine how cumbersome it is to aim and calculate the trajectory by hand. But when we got this gun, in 2000, the Zhengzhou Institute of Electrical Engineering optimized and upgraded it, with academician Chen Dingfang personally overseeing the design. They pushed the AK-176's performance to the limit, adding automation features like auto-reloading and fire control aiming. In 2003, the PG-26 76mm single-barrel stealth naval gun was completed, retaining the 120 rounds per minute firing rate. From radar detection to fire control radar locking, to automatic reloading, aiming, firing, and assessing damage, all are done intelligently. With this gun, any ship it's mounted on qualifies as a warship. Coincidentally, our 3104 Coast Guard ship is also equipped with this gun. Originally, the 3104 was just watching from the sidelines when it saw the BRP Bagake * ramming into our 21,551. The crew of the 3104 was stunned, thinking, why would you do that? Even we wouldn't dare to ram it, but they watched as the collision happened. So, the 3104 decided to head over to the accident scene. As fate would have it, the Cape and Gago * found itself face-to-face with our 3104. The Cape and Gago * captain looked up and saw a Coast Guard ship approaching with its gun ready. If it weren't for the Coast Guard markings, you wouldn't even recognize it as a Coast Guard ship. As soon as the Cape and Gago * captain processed this, our 3104 started firing not the naval gun, but the water cannon. This wasn't the same as the water guns on the 21,551. This was the world-famous Chinese water cannon. The reporter on the Cape and Gago * saw the Chinese water cannon in action for the first time and wanted to capture it with his camera. But before he could even lift the camera, a jet of water hit him straight on. Fortunately, our cannon was aimed a bit higher. Otherwise, all the reporters on the deck might have been flushed overboard. You can't blame our 3,104 for overreacting. After all, the Filipinos had just rammed us with a warship. Our 3,104 was also worried, thinking, what if they ram us? Our paint job is more expensive than the 21,551s. We can't afford that. So, they decided to use the water cannon, hoping to scare the Cape and Gago away. But here's the thing, there's a rule in the world called Murphy's Law. What is Murphy's Law? Simply put, whatever can go wrong, will go wrong. The Cape and Gago was already planning to retreat, but the water cannon hit the captain's cabin, making it uninhabitable. With no one steering, the Cape and Gago veered straight into our 3,104. A loud crash ensued. Upon inspection, the Cape and Gago pillars were broken, its smokestack was knocked off, and its keel was cracked. Think about it, the Cape and Gago weighs 300 tons, while our 3,104 is a 2,000-ton vessel, a decommissioned warship with a hull made of special steel. This is basic knowledge. A warship's hull is different from that of ordinary ships. It undergoes underwater explosion tests. In other words, they explode underwater next to the warship, and it has to withstand the shock to pass the test. After all, a warship is built for battle, not for fishing. So the keel and hull steel of a warship are worlds apart from those of a Parola-class ship. Luckily, our 3,104 didn't crash into the Cape and Gago at full speed, or it could have shattered the Cape and Gago completely. The reporters on the Cape and Gago were so terrified that they lost control of their bowels and bladders. Expensive cameras and lenses were abandoned as they lay on the deck, babbling incoherently. At this point, what else could happen? The two so-called reinforced Parola-class ships from the Philippines could only turn back. It's flattering to call it a retreat. If we hadn't been chasing them with water cannons, they might have actually thought they were retreating. Now, I've turned this into quite a tale, haven't I? But everything I've told you is true. No one else online is as detailed as I am. I've dug up details that make this better than a blockbuster movie. After returning, the faces of the Filipino commanders turned green. These Chinese ships are too tough. Even the smallest 21,551 can't be sunk. We might as well forget about sinking any of their other ships. Can the Americans be happy about this? As the story goes, the Americans called up the Filipinos. Hey, didn't you guarantee you'd sink the ship? What is this nonsense? I saw everything clearly on my satellite. The Filipino commander sheepishly replied, Brother, these Chinese Coast Guard ships are monstrous. It's not that we're incompetent, the opponent is just as strong. I've seen it myself, trying to ram and flip a Chinese Coast Guard ship, forget it. You couldn't do it even if you tried. Let's just drop it, the Filipino said. The ships have been rammed, and we've caused a stir. Just give me the $500 million you promised. Let's settle this, but the American wasn't happy. You think this is worth $500 million? You didn't even cause any casualties. I wanted casualties. How is this worth $500 million? The Filipino commander wasn't pleased. This wasn't the original deal. You said you'd pay me just for causing trouble. Now you're changing the terms and asking for casualties. And even if I wanted to cause casualties, could I? Could you? Even if I dared, I couldn't pull it off. What am I supposed to do? Fire a BrahMos missile at their Coast Guard ships? That might cause casualties, but I wouldn't survive long enough to get out of the country. I'd get shot down even if I tried to flee by plane. The American had to concede that this was indeed the case. At this point, Romeo, the Chief of General Staff for the Philippines, chimed in, My king, the Americans want casualties, but it doesn't have to be Chinese casualties. What if we suffer the casualties? The Americans want to invoke the U.S.-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty, right? If we suffer casualties, will the Americans step in or not? If they don't, they can't blame us for failing. If they do, then it's game over for everyone. The Filipino commander was impressed. What a genius. You've really hit the nail on the head. Let's create some casualties and see how the Americans react. So, were there any casualties? Were they from China or the Philippines? We'll discuss that next time. That's all for now. I'll update you soon because the situation in the South China Sea is pretty much settled as of today, And the conclusions are clear.